We need to think about accessibility to those viewers with special needs. This is way more important than you realize, and something you can make sure happens for anything you design for the web or mobile devices. Thinking about the colorblind. When creating your color palettes, think about those who may be colorblind. Do not rely totally on color to communicate the next step or call to action button, for example. This is why we have 2 buttons here. If we were to add other indicators that this button is important to press, like thickening up the typeface or adding a special border, it could be another indicator to help the user who may not see that bright red color know it's the next thing to do. A good trick to see if this works is make your design totally black and white for a time, to see if you can navigate your website as just black and white, just as you would if it was a full color version. We also need to think about the visually impaired. The same goes for making sure there's enough contrast with your colors and elements. Low contrast may be harder for those with visual impairments to see and navigate your website. Designing forums is a good example of making sure you have enough contrast in your design. When we like to save space whenever possible, sometimes we put the label or name into the input bubble. For contrast reasons, it's easier to read if the label is placed on top or outside of the bubble. The next item is something that may be more for the developer or the coder, but making sure your images have alternate descriptions or alternative descriptions so that their audible web reader can be able to speak the description of what the photo is, so they do not miss out on the impact of the visuals. Another one to think about is also make sure you can navigate your website using just one hand. For example, making sure you can use the tab button to move through your website just using a keyboard. If they're on a phone, make sure buttons and actions are not too far apart from each other. For example, the menu system can be accessed using one hand or one finger because it's at the bottom of the screen. There's also the hearing impaired. If you use any kind of visuals or video, make sure captions are available. Also, make sure audio is not a required experience in your design or digital experience, with special exceptions, of course. There is so much more you could do to make accessible digital design experiences for a user, and it's great to keep these in mind. Make sure your coder or developer is brought into these discussions early on, so they can implement a lot of these.